Hello, welcome to the Training Simplified podcast. My name is Matt with Training Simplified, and I'm super excited today to be chatting with Nick Lawrence, who is a VP of HR at Chick-fil-A. He supports the field organization, and he will explain a little bit more about what that means. Nick and I met recently at a CHART conference, which is the Council for Hotel and Restaurant Trainers. Nick presented, shared some of his insights from Chick-fil-A. There was just a lot of engagement with the people, a lot of follow-up questions. And so I also wanted to follow up and get Nick on the podcast and pick his brain about hospitality, culture, building hospitality training, and what they do at Chick-fil-A to create such a dynamic experience. So, Nick, welcome. What's up, man?
Thank you so much. So glad to be here and be joining you. So it's a beautiful day. I'm currently located in Central Indiana, and excited to chat with you.
Nice. Is that where you live?
Yeah, I'm based out of here in the Indianapolis market. So Pacers, Caitlin Clark, the Fever. You've probably heard of that name. I've been down there. We have a location down there in that arena, and it's been great to watch her play live. So a lot of fun. Great city.
That's cool. So tell me a little bit about your role at Chick-fil-A and how long you've been there.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm the VP of HR for one of the largest franchise groups for our restaurants, which happens to be based here in Central Indiana. So work with them very closely and then help support some of the Midwest initiatives about collection of about 200 restaurants. So I've been with them a little over 4 years, and it's been such a joy. It's best job I've ever had, and hopefully I won't need another one.
That's great. And prior to that, you were in the hotel space and still in hospitality. Is that correct?
I was in big box retail. So I spent 11 years in big box retail, working for Macy's and Target in a variety of roles, all field based as well.
Nice. That's great. Well, so you and I met at this chart conference, like I mentioned, and you presented, on the sort of some of the hospitality training and the standards. What sets Chick-fil-A apart as far as that customer service piece? And it is not a secret that Chick-fil-A is at the top of the heap when it comes to customer service and creating an experience for guests. It's consistently rated number one ever. That's what people think about when they go there. They don't think chicken sandwiches as much as they think my pleasure and that friendliness and the experience. Let's just go straight to the heart of the question. Like what makes it different? What is the thing that makes you guys different when it comes to specifically training employees for customer service?
Yeah. And that's the question I wanted to know for 11 years when I worked in big box retail. Every time we got around the leadership table, we ended up talking about a couple of things: growing sales over last year, and finding great talent to work for us. And, I always said, well, we should just hire people like Chick-fil-A. Those are great people. I ate at them all food court, probably more than I should have. And so over all those years in big box retail, I got to interact with the folks at Chick-fil-A and really just admired their service and their attention to detail and really the way I felt when I left there. And one day after 11 years, I thought, oh, I should just go work for Chick-fil-A. So I've been with them a little over 4 years now, as I mentioned, and it took me almost 4 years to really answer that question, having admired it for 11 years and observing it internally for 4 years. And the simplest way I can put it in one sentence is that for us, my pleasure isn't just our catchphrase. That's our moral obligation. That's how seriously we take it. And that permeates everything we do, whether it's hiring or training, food quality. And we hope that our guests, we call them guests, our customers, they experience that when they come into our dining room or our drive-through. And, we've gotten several accolades for it, but we're working really hard every day to make sure that that's the case, that experience happens. It's almost intangible. And, so that's the one sentence version. I know we'll dive into some of the practical matters of it.
Well, so say that again. You called it a moral imperative. Is that what you said?
It's our moral obligation.
Moral obligation.
Uh,
That's a better word.
yeah.
A
And
moral
the way that
obligation.
plays out, yeah, go ahead.
Please.
Well,
the way that
the way that plays out, just one kind of fun example is uh, if I'm out on a walk with my family, or if I'm just kind of out and I see Chick-fil-A that's been littered, cups and bags, I'll pick it up, and I'll pick it up and hang on to it till I find a trash can, or
mm,
I'll put it in the bottom of the stroller, or it'll be in my car. And at first, my wife was like, "This is kind of bizarre. Like, why are you doing that?" And she's like, "You won't even pick up your socks at home, and here you are picking up other people's trash." So it's just that. It's like almost painful for me to see the brand discarded in that way, and so I'll really go out of my way to pick up pick it up and discard it in an appropriate way. So
yeah.
um, so we just take it that seriously, that it's just not a catchphrase that we say to our customers. It's like a something we live by. It's like a way of life, basically.
Yeah. And man, that's a different level of training. We're talking about training, we're talking about learning and development. Um, and a lot of times training is, the goal is to get an outcome, right? Well, it's always kind of to get an outcome, or the goal is to change people's behavior, get people to do a certain thing, right? Like people might think, oh, the training is designed to get the Chick-fil-A employee to say my pleasure every time, or to provide a certain kind of experience. But a different level of training is like to instill a sense of this moral obligation, or instill this sense of pride and joy in an employee. Like that's a different level of training in my mind. Like what does that look like?
Yeah. It does start with the fundamentals, which I'm sure a lot of people have. We have, make eye contact, and greet the customer, and smile and speak in a warm and friendly tone, and say my pleasure. Those are our fundamentals to our customer service model. And I know a lot of businesses have that. But the reality is, when you go out into the wild, so to speak, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel, or wherever you are, it seems like it's harder and harder to find that. And those are the basic fundamentals, in my opinion. And again, I know everyone has that written down, but sometimes I say, I can do some consulting work, and I say, I wonder if your wallpaper is the same as your walk. Everyone has their purpose written on the wall, but is it the same as your walk? Um, and so we have to get the fundamentals right. That's step one. And then the second step is, how do we go above and beyond? Like, how do we create these like second mile moments? Um, if someone comes through, and we hear it's their birthday, how do we celebrate that with them, and maybe get them a free cookie? Someone's having a bad day, how do we turn that around? Um, but you can't do that unless the order's right, and it's hot and fresh. And kind of a saying I have is, if you don't get the first mile right, the second mile is just an apology.
Right.
And then when we do mess up, we have to recover it in a way that makes sense. So that's the basics, and that kind of model I just laid out. So and again, I think all of our competitors are doing that, or they have some version of that.
Sure.
But the question you're asking is like, how do you take it from that to it being a moral obligation?
Right.
And really, that it's all modeled by our leaders. It starts with our owner operator. That is, the name is really fitting. They're an owner operator. They're in the restaurant, working side by side with the team, serving the community, and then from our managers all the way down to our trainers, and of course our new hires. So it's so imperative that the leader models the way. And
Mm.
the way we do that is by investing in the emotional intelligence of these leaders.
Oh wow. So you feel like ultimately the thing that sets your service model apart is not just like the standards training that you have. Like you don't just have great standards training for employees, but you're saying that you have this really great you're investing in the emotional intelligence of managers, of owner operators at the top, and that instills this sense of pride in them that allows them to both shape a team but also deliver this dynamic experience that people experience when they walk into a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I just met with someone about 2 hours ago, and she was telling me about this. It's an employee engagement like
Hmm.
survey company, and they've been around for a while. They actually just recently sold to a bigger company, but she knew kind of some of the head leaders in charge. And she said, they had surveyed thousands, tens of thousands of people. So they were really dialed in on culture. And she said the number one thing that they found was the way to shape a culture or to grow a culture was to invest in the leadership and the mental health, the emotional intelligence of leaders. So I was encouraged to hear that because I feel like we've made big steps to do that. But yes, I think another part of it, and we can deep dive into the emotional intelligence piece, but I think another component is that we feel like, I think you have to ask about your why, why are we doing all this? And part of it is to sell a great chicken sandwich and of course to have a profitable business. But, if you take the why one step further, which I'm not sure a lot of businesses do, um, we feel like we're changing the world by selling a chicken sandwich. Like there's like a higher purpose to this. And some of it's not even defined, it's just out there. um, and, um, and some people just get it or they don't, and that's a lot to ask someone to buy into. Like, hey, do you, 15-year-old high school student, do you want to come change the world by selling a chicken sandwich?
Right.
It's a lot to like contextualize. Now, we don't say it that way, and
Right.
philosophically, they never probably get there. But all of that is behind the training and what we do, and
Mm.
the 2-minute interaction that our customers have, our guests have in the drive-through. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I love that. Like, yeah, having that why in my, like having that at the center of what you're creating, and what you're delivering for employees is what I hear you saying.
yeah,
Um, so let's say I'm a manager. Okay. I'm a manager going into a new Chick-fil-A or whatever your process looks like. I'm sure there's different levels and layers to that. But what do I practically receive when it comes to this emotional intelligence training or program or whatever you want to call it? You said supporting their mental health. What would I actually receive on my end? What would it look like for me as one of these managers?
yeah, great question. And I'll just share the steps slightly before that if I can.
Yeah.
So when we hire a lot of managers in training, leaders in training, and even if someone has been a leader at a different Chick-fil-A, in the country, we say, hey, you're going to come into our franchise group, and you're going to go through what I call red shirt boot camp. Our entry level team members wear a red polo, and their pay and benefits are elevated, from day one. But you're going to go through the process of what our new team members go through, and that's kind of how they get to know the team and our process. And our goal is to say, when 3 to 6 months in, when we say, hey everybody, Matt is the new manager of X, everyone says, oh yes, we love Matt, we thought he was already doing that. Whereas most companies, they on day one they say, hey everybody, Matt's the new manager of X, and everyone says, who's Matt?
Right.
So that's really crucial for us, and sometimes that's like a turnoff to people. They're like, yeah, I don't want to do that, I already earned my stripes and have time served elsewhere. And we do take that into consideration, but we feel like that red shirt boot camp is really critical to just getting into the leadership role. But to answer your question, what would someone get practically? Well, we have a leadership coach on staff. They're in house. They're on our payroll, and they meet with this person about every other month, and they go through a personal development plan.
Hmm.
And this person's supervisor will primarily talk about performance, but the leadership development coach talks about matters of the head and the heart. So it's like a sports psychologist, but we have a restaurant psychologist.
Yeah.
Um, so they're diving into things like the Enneagram, that personality assessment, Patrick Lencioni's Working Genius. We might do a book study, and all of this creates this common language, so people can know themselves better, especially when they get frustrated or frustrated with their peers. It just helps explain some of it, because we're human. We're gonna mess up, and we're gonna get frustrated, and we all carry baggage outside of work into work, and this just helps us be healthier to deal with it, because we know challenges are going to arise. So that's a really high level of what someone would get from that emotional intelligence standpoint.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. What would you say to somebody who maybe hears you saying this and is like, well, okay, that's great. I don't have the resources though to have a leadership coach on staff. I don't know. I can't afford a sports psychologist or, to have somebody do that. Like, do you know of any, I guess, similar resources or options for a brand that maybe has 10 units or 30 units, and they're not at the place to have somebody on staff to do that? Do you know of any programs you'd recommend for someone like that?
Yeah, well, it's such a great question, and from time to time, hear the question, and it's usually the CFO who's asking it, and
Yeah.
I say, um, the way they phrase it is, what if we invest all of this time and energy and money into somebody, and what if they leave us, right? Which is a fair question, right? And I usually say, well, what if you do nothing and they stay with you? So our philosophy is we want to grow you to go or grow you to stay. And when somebody leaves us, we ask the question, are they running towards something better in their opinion? Or are they running away from something? They're running away from something we did. And that's really hard because it's tough to lose good talent, especially when you invest in them like that. And but that's part of our mission statement. And sometimes when I get frustrated with that, or it's bittersweet, um, I say it's hard to live out our mission statement, and that's why we have it the way we do. But to answer your question, we each Chick-fil-A operates like it's a small mom and pop business. These franchises. So, the group I support has kind of found a way to do it. But if someone's saying, "Hey, we're not sure how to make that work financially," or we don't have a person who could do that for us, I would start with the Enneagram. It's a free assessment. It'll kind of spit out your results, so to speak. And then this is where I would leverage AI. I would, like for me, I plugged in my resume, my work history, my results, and I said, "Hey, can you develop a leadership profile that would help me?" And it did help me. And then I
Huh.
gave it to people on my team, those who report to me, and I said, "This is the good, bad, and ugly of your supervisor." And um, and I said, if you're ever frustrated with me or you feel like something we're doing doesn't make sense, I think you should start here because it's going to give you really good insights. And I know that it will because it gave me really good insights about myself. And, we, a saying we like to use is we play with our cards facing out, like why hide anything? If we're frustrated, let's talk about it. Um, and for example, one bullet point on my leadership profile says that I may become frustrated with slow processes, routine tasks, or lack of progress on long-term goals,
Hmm.
or perceived lack of progress. And when that was kind of when AI told me about that, I thought, oh, that is so true. And I
Yeah.
kind of played the highlight reel of my career, and I was like, yep. And, occasionally I'd kind of get frustrated in meetings and I thought, do I have anger management issues? And I, I don't think that's the case. I think that's how I'm wired as a leader. But now that I know that and my team knows that, they have my permission to call me out on it and my commitment that I'm going to handle it in a healthy way. So that's just one tiny example. And, but if you play it the opposite direction, so I don't know what's happening. Now I'm frustrated with myself because I think I'm not a good leader and I have these traits that are making me frustrated in a meeting. My peers see I'm frustrated, and instead of us talking about it, um, they're going to talk about it to other people at the water cooler
Right.
or after the meeting. Um, and if they did find the courage to talk to me about it, I'm going to get defensive or downplay it or lie about it or sweep it under the rug because I don't know what's going on actually. Um, so that's just one example. So I would encourage these folks to find someone on the team who could be, maybe it's not their full time job, but it could be a couple hours a week or a couple hours a month, where they can kind of help have these conversations. Um, it, I got one more thing, if I can,
Yeah.
on that
Yeah. Let's hear it.
topic. I keep hearing over and over again at conferences I go to and podcasts I listen to, the the how valuable the one-on-one meeting is with the supervisor and their direct reports,
Yeah.
um, and we take that very seriously too. So I meet with my direct reports every Monday. one-on-one for between 30 minutes and an hour. And we talk work and life and it's so critical. And a lot of people say they don't have the time or there's nothing really to talk about. But um, like like most businesses, ours moves so fast. If we skip a week, it's really it's easy to get off course pretty quickly. So that that one-on-one can be a space to carve out some time to say, hey, let's work through the Enneagram or let's read a leadership book together. And what I tell people, which kind of sounds odd, but you could almost pick any leadership resource at random. The fact that you're working on it and there's
Yeah.
common language is going to move you ahead way far down the road. So, but that one-on-one is so imperative. And occasionally people say, well, I have too many reports. I can't do that. I wouldn't have the time to meet with everyone one-on-one. And the answer to that is you have too many direct reports.
Yeah.
Your scope of direct reports should be the amount of people you can meet one-on-one with every week and still get your job done. Um, that's my personal opinion. Obviously, sometimes that doesn't work practically, but anyways, I think that's worth noting too.
Yeah, I really appreciate that it's that ultimately like you could choose any leadership modality or curriculum, but it's really about that consistency of working it, consistency of the one-on-one connection with your team that will actually create the results. I mean, it's like exercise when people are looking for like the perfect exercise plan, and it's like, dude, it's just the one that you do is the
Yeah,
perfect
yeah. It's like just go
exercise.
for a walk.
Yeah, it's the one
Just
that you
start there.
will actually do. And yeah, so in this case, like there's so many options out there when it comes to emotional intelligence development and leadership development. But I love that it's more about creating that container of one-on-one connection with a leader and with the team, and yeah, just being consistent. I really appreciate that. I just love like um, I love the insight that we get from things like the Enneagram or the disc test or any of these, because there's been multiple times when I've taken a test like you said, and like it just kind of pegs you and you're like, oh yeah, that is definitely me. Yeah, so much value in kind of starting with that with people and kind of having again sort of that shared language that you talked about. And so choosing a test or a modality and just kind of going all in on it gives you that shared language. So when you have your one-on-ones, when you check in, you have something that you can talk about, that you have this common understanding of what you're talking about and what it means and kind of the richness behind it, which is really really powerful, I think, too. I like that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to one thing you said here, because it's so practical and specific. So just tell me if this is correct. Did you literally just take your Enneagram results, copy paste them, put it into Chat GPT, copy paste your resume, and you typed in something like, based on this information, will you write me a leadership profile? Is that exactly what you did?
Yeah, I think yeah, more or less, honestly.
Yeah.
The prompt was probably a little bit, more specific about talk about what fills my bucket and what frustrates me, and my end goal for this is to deliver it to my team, and
Mm,
this is the type of business I work in, and this is but yeah, more or less that's what I did, and it was like 85% like spot on,
right.
and you tweak a few things, and uh, it's pretty close. And I'm a big fan of using AI in that way. And I kind of get nervous. A lot of schools are like banning AI, and I get this kind of critical thinking skills, but I when I'm joking with when I meet professors or teachers, I say, just so you know, we're all using it in the business world. So
Yeah.
they need to learn somewhere how to interact with it in a way that's productive. But yes, that's exactly what I did. And um, I read through it. I had to audit it to make sure. There's a couple things that I thought, no, that's not necessarily true for me.
Yeah.
That I found with the Enneagram, if you get your, results correct, it's pretty accurate, kind of spooky accurate, where you're like, do other people know this about me? But
That's great.
it's just helpful. And, you know, I would kind of add in there, we have found, especially in the field organization, the one thing our leaders really need to have is they need to be gritty. They need to be able to handle tough things. And it's all relative, right? We don't work in a hospital emergency room, but sometimes the pressure, I think, is just as intense when you have 200 cars going through the drive-through in an hour. How do you handle that and stay on top of your game? So that gritty aspect to leadership of oftentimes leaders will say, well, I would never ask my team to do anything I wouldn't do. But it's kind of hard to prove that when you work in like a corporate office cubicle setting.
Right.
But when you work in a restaurant and a 14-year-old asks you to clean the bathroom, you can prove it. You can, yeah, I'll make milkshakes. I'll clean up the bathroom. So the gritty aspect to our leadership is crucial too.
And so it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like that grit that you're describing, you sort of define it as the willingness to do any of the jobs, the willingness to jump in and do whatever that leader needs to do to teach or to get the job done, to be in the trenches with people. Is that sort of how you would define grit in this case?
Exactly. Yeah. And I've seen other companies call it wit, whatever it takes.
Mm.
So regardless of title, we're going to jump in and do what it takes to serve our guests. And for non-traditional roles, HR, marketing, finance, that's a tough sell, especially if someone's worked it remotely, work from home. We don't have a work from home job. Thank goodness I'm not serving our customers in my living room. All the action happens at the restaurant, and that's where I'm at. That's where my team's at, and that's where our customers are. So sometimes that's a tough sell, but we're very clear up front. This is part of leadership in our restaurant, in our organization, and we hope and we feel like the data shows all that spills over to our frontline team, which is primarily who our guests are interacting with. So we feel like that's part of the magic too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense. Um, well, Nick, thank you for your insight and for kind of sharing a lot of this kind of practical peek behind the curtain here of how you guys are kind of making the magic happen over there, at Chick-fil-A. I know you also, you're out there, you're speaking at conferences, you're sharing a lot of this, on a personal level and kind of, like you said, sharing with the industry. Is there, if someone wanted to like have you come and share at a conference or something like that, what do they need to do? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find me, Nicholas Lawrence on LinkedIn. Send me a message and happy to chat and see where the conversation takes us.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, thanks again for joining me at the from the embassy, live from the Embassy Suites. Um, yeah, and we will chat again. Thank you.
Very good. My pleasure. Thank you.